What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about F9 The Fast Saga. And I know that title sounds pretty weird, but on IMDb, that's the official title. That's the official title when I was looking at it on posters and for the logo, for the thumbnail. So that's what we're going to roll with. But yeah, before we get too far into this, just to kind of clear the air about this franchise, I enjoy the franchise. It's a guilty pleasure kind of franchise for me. My favorites are 5 through 7. I'm not crazy about the franchise overall. I'm not like a huge fan. I would say I'm a fairly casual fan, but I've seen every movie, a lot of them multiple times. And ultimately, as they've gotten more and more ridiculous and more crazy as time has gone on, I've just kind of learned to not really go into these movies for narrative, but really just go for the big over-the-top action sequences and seeing these characters once again. It's very much like a TV show, like you're just watching another episode of a show with these characters. A lot of times these films lack character development and, you know, kind of a really strong narrative, and I feel like this one is no different. However, I have seen a lot of critics and people that I trust say that the movie is pretty bad, and by the time the movie is over, I can honestly say I had a good time. I enjoyed it, and I kind of felt very similar to this film as I did with Fate of the Furious, the 8th film in the franchise, because ultimately this movie is big, it's over the top, it has those ridiculous elements. You have people literally falling off of buildings and being caught by cars as if that makes it like a soft landing. I won't be talking any spoilers in this review, but ultimately, you know, if you see the trailers for this movie, it's completely ridiculous. It's over the top, and they went for 100% in this movie. And just leading up to it, every single installment from the 5th film till now, including something like Hobbs and Shaw, where they introduce superpowers, has just shown us that this franchise is no longer at all what it was grounded in when it came to the first 4 films in the franchise. It's just a whole different world now. And again, from the 5th to the 6th to the 7th to the 8th to Hobbs and Shaw, if you haven't jumped on board this ridiculous train that this franchise is at this point, there's just no way that you can enjoy it. Ultimately, what I walked away from this film thinking was, you got great performances, great cinematography, really big, over-the-top, stupid, cartoony action that's just entertaining to watch, a pretty solid score, and you know, the performances were good, the characters were solid, and I just had a good time watching it. Outside of that, the narrative is a bit messy, it's a little bit all over the place and gets really muddled. You also have a lot of characters in this film, similar to what you would have in the previous films, you know, the ragtag group of characters that are in this franchise that we see over the course of all these movies. You know, it's always nice to see them all together. Some of them are there for comedic relief, some of them are there for emotional support for Dom, and then there's Dom, right? And, you know, Vin Diesel pretty much spearheads this franchise for the most part, and this one is very similar to the 8th film for me, where they bring up some new thing, some new drama from Dom's life, and everybody else kind of has to help him through that while they're all also fighting some sort of like world-ending situation. And in the last film, it was Charlize Theron, who's in this film as well, but she's fairly wasted for the most part. And in this case, if you've seen the trailers, it's John Cena. Turns out that he is the brother of Vin Diesel's character, Dom, all this time. So this does one of those things that a lot of sequels do, where we get all this new context about the past of one of the main characters of a franchise that we've been following for years, a brother that we've never heard of. And so we get a little bit of backstory on that through some flashbacks and kind of learning about their characters. And ultimately, by the end of the film, I thought to myself, I feel very similar to this film as I did with Fate of the Furious. It's not my least favorite in the franchise. It's not my favorite in the franchise. I think 5, 6, and 7 are the best in the series, in my opinion. But ultimately, I've just kind of learned to go into these movies, shut my mind off, and just kind of have fun with the action, the silly, over-the-top moments, and all of these characters slowly becoming superheroes over the course of this franchise. And that's pretty much what has happened. And if you saw Hobbs and Shaw, like I mentioned, Idris Elba's character literally calls himself Black Superman because he has superpowers. They literally introduce superpowers in that franchise, and both The Rock and Jason Statham in that film are over the top. They're pretty much superheroes. And so in this film, Vin Diesel took a page from their book from that one, and he's just a superhero as well, just taking people out left and right. Everybody's super strong, everybody can get through anything that they want to. And I feel like the biggest issue that this franchise is going to start to have, the biggest issue that this film had for me, was the tonal inconsistency, right? You have these big over-the-top cartoony sequences that I was just kind of buying into at this point, this deep into the franchise, where literally somebody can fall off of a high fall and land on a car and they're totally fine. They're like literally catching each other with cars. People are getting in and out of situations where they easily should have been dead. People are in terrible car accidents while they're not wearing their seatbelt and don't have a single scratch on them. And what's funny is that this film makes fun of that throughout the course of the film. there's a self-aware joke throughout the entirety of the film about the fact that they don't really take on much damage, that they can get through these situations with ease, with no problem. And you know, it's literally brought up multiple times in the film. So it's like the filmmakers were just trying to say, listen, these characters are going to do anything and everything we need them to do in this script to keep things moving and to have big over-the-top action. And in a lot of ways, I love that. In a lot of ways, it's so silly, it's so stupid, it's so fun that I can just sit back and watch this big over-the-top car action with guns and fist fights. And all that in this film was well done. I feel like the film was well shot, it was well acted, well directed for the most part in terms of those sequences, especially the action sequences. You know, the performances were solid. The dialogue's a little bit clunky, and the story itself is muddled and a little bit messy on all over the place. And there's definitely a lack of character development throughout the film. But ultimately, the action set pieces and some of the humor between the characters and just being able to see these characters all come together, that's really what you come to these movies for, you know? And I feel like this film definitely paid off. A lot of great things for fans from the past, from previous films. One of the biggest scenes that they showed in the marketing, which I thought was the dumbest decision they could have made, and again, this is not a spoiler because it has been shown in all of the publicity, is the fact that the character Han comes back, and he died films ago at this point. And so to see that he just came back in the trailer, they show his reunion scene in the trailer, which I feel just kind of took the wind out of that sequence when I watched it in the movie, because there were people in the theater that were applauding when that happened, and all I could kind of think to myself was, did these people not watch the trailers? Like, you know, like there was completely no surprise there. And I leaned over to my fiance while I was watching, and I was just like, man, the way that they set it up, the way that it's happening in the film, the way that the music ramps up, this would have been a really awesome moment had they not shared any of that in the trailer. So yeah, without a doubt, there was stuff like that where I just feel like they kind of cheapen the blow of what was happening. And ultimately, if you've seen the trailer, I feel like you've seen the movie. The film is very predictable, and it's not a film that is phenomenal. But at this point, I have a guilty pleasure connection to this franchise. I think if you're somebody who enjoyed this franchise at the beginning and you've been struggling with them just getting more and more and more unrealistic with very illogical choices from characters and physics going right out the window, then there's no way you're going to enjoy this film unless you can just shut that part of your mind off and just enjoy it as a mindless action film, which is pretty much what it is. Now, of course, you still have that central theme of family that goes across all of these films. And, you know, I like that. I think it's a nice theme to have across these films. But again, because of that, it makes the story predictable. And because of the fact that literally the film is making jokes about the fact that the characters get in and out of situations without any harm. And the fact that that is exactly what happens throughout the course of the film, even at times where they make it seem like a character was severely wounded. By the time the movie's over, you just think to yourself, no matter how big the situation, no matter how big the stakes, you never really feel a sense of stakes for the characters themselves. You never feel any sort of danger for them. Because literally in this film, there are times where characters are in literally car rolling accidents, don't have seatbelts on, and they don't have a single scratch on them. They don't have a single dent on them. And again, they're making this joke throughout the film about them being pretty much superhuman. And it just feels like the directors and the writers were just like, hey, we're just gonna laugh about this at this point. We're just gonna laugh about the fact that they are completely indestructible and that there's no way, shape, or form that they can be hurt. And that's pretty much what they do. So ultimately, was this a great film? No, but was it a terrible film? Is it as bad as people are saying? I don't think so. I think longtime big Fast and the Furious fans are gonna have a lot of fun. In the theater I was sitting in, there was plenty of applause and laughter for a lot of little moments, specifically at moments that I knew were gonna be big moments for longtime fans. So I think if you're a longtime fan and you check this movie out, there's going to be those little moments for you. But again, you know, if you've seen the 8th film, if you've seen Hobbs and Shaw, this one is very similar in its really ridiculous, over-the-top action that does not in any way, shape, or form take physics into account or logic or any of that. The story is fairly predictable, and you just kind of have to know that going in. But if you enjoy these characters, if you enjoy that central theme of family, if you enjoy the big over-the-top action, and you're okay with the lack of character development and story when it comes to something like this, then there's plenty of fun to be had. Now, there's definitely things about the film I wasn't crazy about. There are flashback sequences in the film. I won't get too deep into what that's all about, but in the film, we're kind of getting some backstory on these characters, and we're seeing younger versions of characters that we've seen before, but it just doesn't really work for me because we've seen these actors playing these characters since the very beginning when they were really young. And so now to have these other younger actors that don't really look like them playing younger versions of them, not that far off from the events of the first Fast and the Furious, it just seems like, why did we choose to do that? So yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap up my quick thoughts on the franchise. I do want to talk about one thing in just one moment though that is gonna be spoilery, so we'll get past that in just one second. But ultimately, thank you guys for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Please hit that like like button if you guys enjoyed the video. It actually took me a few times to film this. For some reason, I'm just feeling a little bit flustered tonight, and this is like literally about like almost 20 minutes of trying to film this quick 10-minute segment without making mistakes or getting all over the place. I was getting ahead of myself, and I was just getting all kinds of flustered. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave your comments down below, hit that like button, subscribe for more videos. And for those of you who have stuck around up to this point, I am going to talk about one thing that you probably have heard about already, and you can see slightly in the trailers, but it is a bit spoilery. So if you don't want to hear it, go watch the movie, come back, and we can talk about it. But yeah, if you're still sticking around, that is your spoiler warning. Here we go. They go to space. It finally happens. That joke that people have been making for years, it actually happens. And it's not only like they, kind of flew up and they're like near space. No. They are in space, out there in orbit. And I don't know what to say about that. I don't know what to say. This just kind of paints the idea of what I'm trying to say about this movie. The film is so self-aware in its dialogue and its situations that it's hard to take it serious. It's hard to critique it, right? And I think that one of the biggest issues that I have with this film is that when I look back on it all, it's very over the top and ridiculous in the action sequences, but then it has this very dramatic and heavy weighing narrative when it comes to the family element that's happening throughout the course of the film. And the story's a little bit muddled and all over the place, and there's not really great character development. But as far as that family story, it is very much laced in drama in a lot of, kind of heavy on the heart, topics. Meanwhile, though, you have cars doing absolutely cartoonish things, and these characters are surviving, stuff that should kill them in 2 seconds. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry this went on longer than I intended to, but please hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, comment your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.